Hey everybody, it's Mike. This is what did I call this channel? This channel is the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup channel. Not the most, uh, not the smallest name in the world. Anyway, I just threw something together. I started this channel again after literally the day that it became final. I had been discarded, and it had been a couple of weeks, and I was still, reeling from the um, the just the lack of closure. I was still reeling from it, and that it was really traumatic for me, not understanding and not having any closure. And so I went and met with her, and I've shared about that. I said, I want to come over. I need to talk to you just for 10 minutes. I just need to get some closure. And for whatever reason, I don't understand, she thought I was going to talk to her on the phone. So when I actually knocked on the door, she was, just looked like a deer in the headlights, and was, I think I saw her at her most, her most real self, without all of the facades and the the coping mechanisms, and that was really eye-opening for me, because I left going, wow, that's who I'm really dealing with. I shared about that. I won't share about it again. But this channel is here to help the codependent, those who have been in relationships with a borderline. And so I want to address the denial that codependents have. And let me once again be clear. It is my belief, and I firmly believe it, there's nothing you're going to say that's going to talk me out of this belief. It is a blanket statement that I say applies to anybody who has been or is in a romantic relationship with a borderline that lasts for more than one night. In all seriousness, if you're with them and after the first night you didn't think to yourself, at the very least, interesting person, but I don't think I want to get in a committed relationship. If you had any other response other than that, or something feels really off about this person, my instincts are telling me to stay away. If you had any other experience than that, you are codependent. By definition, a codependent is somebody who has an ongoing, intermingled relationship with somebody who has a very serious mental or psychological dysfunction. If you are married to an alcoholic, you are by definition codependent. You're in a relationship with a drug addict, you are by definition codependent. Totally different issue. We could debate whether or not alcoholism is a mental illness or whether it's a physical neurological disease. Doesn't change the fact that the behavior is very dysfunctional, and the only way to be able to tolerate it is if you yourself are codependent. So we can look at that. If we're not in that, we can look at that and go, yeah, of course, somebody's with somebody drinking and puking every day, and you're with that. There's, you're choosing to be there. If you're with a borderline, you are codependent. Period. End of story. And I emphasize that because if you want freedom from that, if you want to be free and be in a state of recovery, the first step is to acknowledge that you are at a loss, that you are operating from some denial, some lack of understanding of reality. You are under the delusion that there is hope. You are in denial of the fact that you are with somebody who has a mental illness. And I use the word mental illness not to stigmatize them, because they're humans, they deserve love. And from what I can see, they can recover if they choose to. But it's a mental illness, meaning that they are not operating on all full cylinders, and they are not capable of returning the love that you give them. If you don't see that, if that isn't abundantly clear to the point where you have said, wow, this isn't something I want, I'm going to end this and I'm going to leave, then that means that you are in denial and you have a delusion about who you're with, and you have a delusion about yourself. So I've used this example before. This is, obviously not a perfect example, but let's say you want to go run a marathon and you're with somebody who only has one leg and doesn't have, a prosthetic leg. They're just hopping around on one leg. Now, they think they have two legs, and they get very upset when you tell them they only have one leg. But this person says, I am so, and we'll sit down with you and have coffee, and we'll talk about the running shoes that they wear, and we'll talk about how much they love to run marathons, and oh gosh, yeah, I ran this marathon and that marathon, and I want to run a marathon with you, and you start making plans to run a marathon. The whole time you can see, every now and then, they move and you can see they only have one leg, but they say they have two legs, and I really want them to run with me. And then when it comes time to run the marathon, they can't do it. They trip, they fall, they try to get back up, you try to help them, they punch you in the groin, they tell you to leave them alone, and yet then they'll scream and help. What's wrong with you? Pull me up, I need help. At some point, somebody who isn't a codependent would walk along and say, it's not going to work. Oh, all right, fine. They scream at the person, okay, fine, just go ahead, run the marathon. They just keep running and they don't pay any attention to you. That's what it's like. If you honestly think that you're with somebody who can love you, and if you think that you have the ability to love them, then we have two insane people trying to accomplish the impossible, and they just won't give up. So if you are in a relationship with a borderline, then you are under a delusion, you are in denial. And again, this is the first step. I'm not saying that it needs to be emotionally easy. There can be a point where you intellectually and consciously realize this is unhealthy and it can't work, and still be emotionally unable to disconnect. But that is the place to start, that's when you realize I have a problem. I'm in a relationship that's toxic, it can't work, and yet I can't disconnect. Then you can say, I'm a codependent. But if you keep saying that you're not, then it's as if you are saying that the person with one leg has two legs, and it becomes ridiculous and sad and tragic, and no wonder you're in so much pain. Okay? So again, it's not the greatest analogy in the world, but you get where I'm going with it. So I wanted to respond to a comment. So I'm going to be straight with you. Bear in mind, let me just be clear again. I am not a therapist. I am not a counselor. I am not a mental health professional. If you are in need of that, seek them out. All I'm doing here is I'm sharing my experience and what I did. There was a three-pronged approach that I used, which helped me to achieve a state of recovery from codependence to a borderline. Bear in mind, you can also be single and have been single for years and still be in the throes of your codependency. A state of recovery doesn't just mean that you're not with them. It means that you're happy, you're healthy, you don't walk around wounded, you don't have any pain, regrets, resentment, you don't keep attracting similar types of people into your life. That is what I mean by a state of recovery. As I've shared, and the reason why I started this channel, it was the most toxic, the most painful, concentrated experience of my entire 56 years of living. And that's saying a lot. I grew up in an alcoholic family, codependent, borderline tendency mother. My brother, I think, may be borderline now that I think about it. Very abusive. And I did all the work in those 12-step groups to really can work hard to achieve a level of sanity in that. So for me to say that my however long it was, 4 months or whatever, of being in a romantic relationship with a borderline was the most toxic, concentrated, painful experience of my life is saying a lot. And so that's why I think it's really important to look at this. And that's why when people come on here, and I think this channel fits a niche that doesn't exist. There's a lot of, I could be wrong, but there's a lot of channels out there talking about borderline personality disorder, and there's a lot of places for borderlines, I think, to go and talk about what's going on. But there isn't really a place for the codependents who have an illness as well, have a form of insanity as well. Forgive me for using these words, but we have to differentiate between somebody who's got a problem and somebody who's at a disadvantage, like somebody with only one leg trying to run a marathon. It doesn't mean they're a horrible person. It just means they don't have the tools to do the task at hand. So anyway, I'm sort of talking in circles here. So I want to get to the comment. So I had made a video, why borderlines can't, I think it is, I can't remember what it is. Anyway, I made a video and somebody responded, and he used the word unconditional love. And I talked about that, and I targeted that, and I said, you're putting an emotional and moral quality to your actions, which I think are not accurate. He said, and he was asking, why is it that borderlines can't accept when you give them unconditional love? That gives the feeling that the person is without agenda, that the person is coming from a morally pure place, that they don't have any personal desires in it, that they are unconditionally without any personal agenda or need or selfishness. They are acting in this pure, perfect way. And the other person then, just when you say the word, why is somebody rejecting my unconditional love? It automatically creates a judgment about them that, they must be, unloving or unlovable or abusive, or, it gives something to them that makes them, they're rejecting and responding negatively to unconditional love. So I wanted to point out that I thought that wasn't accurate. And what I really wanted to point out was that was a symptom of unrecognized codependence. So I believe this person is in a state of codependent denial. I don't know if his name is Brandon, he knows who he is. I don't know if he has been in therapy or has been in a 12-step group for codependence. It doesn't sound like it to me. He sounds like a victim, and he sounds like he's in a lot of pain, and he's trying to understand. He still doesn't completely understand that borderline personality disorder is a mental illness. It's not just that she's incapable of taking your love and loving you back, and somehow she'll take somebody else's love. It's just she's focused on you and she's being mean to you. She's not capable. And that anybody who's not codependent, as I said, will know immediately. I mean, within minutes or hours, they will know something is up with this person, and they won't feel, there will be at the very least an instinct which says, this is somebody I need to stay away from. The second thing is that the borderline will not be attracted to somebody who who doesn't have this codependent need inside of them. The hole, the pain, the trauma. The borderline will not be attracted to somebody who has strong boundaries and is powerful within themselves and isn't needing that. They will find them unappealing. So this match made in heaven means that both of you have a pain within you, and she has her pain, and your pain is seeking each other out. And that you are just as abusive Let me repeat it. If you are a codependent, even though you're the one that takes on the victim role, you're the one that gets lied to and abused and tossed aside and all of that. Just because you've chosen to take on that role does not mean that your love isn't abusive. When you can realize that, then you can realize that, I've used this before, that when you seek out when you realize that the person that you're with on an emotional level is this, then if you're trying to have a romantic and sexual relationship with a toddler, that by definition is abusive. Now, I know people get really pissed off when I say that, but you don't know, you get a pass. You didn't know that. Now you do. If you're still trying to make it work with your borderline, it means you're trying to have a romantic and sexual relationship with that. Now, she has the body of an adult, but emotionally, she's there. And to some extent, mentally, she's there. So number one, it's impossible. It's not fair of you to try and ask this little girl to be responsible for your feelings. It's insane. You can't do it. What's wrong with you? I did it too. But that helped me when I became aware that what I was dealing with was this. It just like all of the pain, well, most of the pain that was associated with why doesn't she love me? Why is she doing this to me? Went, oh, of course. She thinks she's an adult, she's trying her best, and I'm talking a completely foreign language. Try talking, theoretical physics with that little baby. She's not going to have a clue what you're talking about. Just trying to get her to understand is going to make her cry. She'll get overwhelmed. She won't know what the hell you mean. What do you mean light acts as both a particle and a wave? That's what happens when you're saying to the borderline, why don't you love me back? Why can't you follow through with your promises and commitments? All they hear is wah, 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 wah. They can't hear. There's a part of them that just doesn't get it. Intellectually, yeah, it's superficial though. So if you are a codependent, you're trying to force theoretical physics down this little girl's throat and she can't handle it. And that's abusive. It's not fair to her. And the moment that you realize that, you can get out. Nobody's forcing you to stay. Those of you who have, stayed for a long time and gotten married and had kids, I feel for you. You're right. It's a lot harder to walk away from that. But it doesn't change the fact that you knew going into it. She was trying to tell you long before she got pregnant that that's who she was and you weren't listening. She can't help but need you. That's the other thing. If what's driving you is, but she needs me. I need to take care of her. If without me, you're responding to this. And so that's see what I'm saying? I'm trying to go somewhere with this. Anyway, let's get back to the comment. So I corrected Brandon on, I didn't mean to correct him, but I was pointing out that when he used the term unconditional love, that he was actually using it in a codependent fashion, that he was masking his agenda, which was he was going to force his love onto her. So you can replace unconditional love with unwanted love forced down a baby's throat. It's not pure, it's not without agenda. It means that you wanted something. You have an unrealistic expectation, and your experience is that you keep giving unconditional love. They keep rejecting you and torturing you and throwing you away, and you keep giving them love. Why can't they take it? They obviously can't. You've got an agenda. The only reason you're doing it is because you want something from them. So just because you say it's unconditional love doesn't mean you don't want something. So you have to get honest with what you want. that you want to be loved, that you want them to take care of you, that you want them to fix you. Because that was the promise they made when they love bombed you. Maybe they didn't say that, and maybe they did. In my case, she did. In fact, I remember saying, we're going to fix that part, because she'd bring out me, I'd cry about my mother this, that my fiance passed away, that, my ex-wife this. We're going to, we're going to create the perfect relationship, and we're going to heal this in you, and we're going to heal that in you. And, of course, none of that happened. So they may say they want it, but the behavior has been very clear. The message of the behavior has been very clear, and you haven't gotten the message. You've denied it and refused to listen to it. And now you're hiding behind unconditional love, and it's not unconditional. So he didn't really hear me the first time, so he doubles down and he says, when I said unconditional love, I just meant my repeated attempts to forgive her and be there for her no matter what. That's what I'm trying to say. Your repeated attempts, that's the perfect word, because none of it ever landed. And that's what I mean. You're trying to force it on somebody, and their behavior is letting you know that they don't want it and or can't take it, and trying to force it down their throat is abusive. You don't see that. You didn't see that then, but now you do, hopefully. And if knowing that they can't love you back isn't enough for you to walk away, then knowing that your repeated attempts to force your love on them is abusive. And I literally, I had to look at my borderline ex this way. I had to. That's why I keep using this, this picture. I keep thrusting this picture up at you. I know it's kind of harsh and it's difficult to look at. It makes me want to cry every time I look at her. But that's because it reminds me that the pain that I see when I look in her little face is my projection of myself. The reality is that's probably some little girl who came in to do a photo shoot, and she was really happy, and she's probably very well loved, and she just cried for a moment, and the photographer took the picture. I'm quite sure that little girl is doing just fine. But when I look at that, I don't go, oh, little baby crying. Do you have gas? Here, it's okay. I don't think like that. I go, oh my God, she's never been loved and she never will be loved, and life is horrible and we have to live life with like we're empty, unloved little infants. Why do you think I feel that way? If you have that same response when you look at her, because it all depends on what you project onto it. It means that that's you. You're seeing yourself. I look at her and I see me, I don't remember it, but I can feel that as an infant that I did not get all the love. I have this feeling that I cried for hours on end in my crib and my mom didn't come and take care of me. One of my first memories is I think I was 3 or 4 years old. And I remember, my mom was sitting at a desk doing, I don't know what, taxes or something. I don't know what she was doing. She was doing adult stuff. And I remember looking up and barely being able to see up over the top of the desk, and my mom crying, having a crying jag. And all I remembered was that when mommy cries, I don't get love. And she probably was depressed. I think my dad was cheating on her. Something like that was going on, and mom didn't have time to take care of little Mikey. And that's what I see when I look at that. So what do you see when you look at her? The way you're healthy and that you are loved is that when you look at her, you go, oh, little baby, come here, it's all right. And you know that baby's going to be just fine. Babies cry. That's okay. Maybe a little gas. Baby's going to be just fine. But if you look at that and you think, oh my God, this empty black hole of nothingness, I'm never going to ever be loved. Nobody's ever going to see me. My needs have never been met. And if you think, instead of yourself, you think about your borderline ex like I do, and you go, oh my God, the emptiness and the pain that they live with, and that's so horrible that I have to heal that, I have to fix that. If that's what comes up when all that happens as you look at that picture, you are codependent. Because that's you. So your repeated attempts to forgive her and be there for her no matter what is your unconscious desire to have somebody repeatedly forgive you and be there for you no matter what. But it's too painful to look at that, so we project it onto others. So he says, when I said unconditional love, I just meant my repeated attempts to forgive her and be there for her no matter what. But you are right. My love for her was not unconditional. It is, in fact, conditional, because eventually I laid down the law and made some boundaries. Those were my conditions. No, they weren't. That's not what I meant. This is your denial kicking in. I didn't say that at all. I said the same thing I'm saying now, that when you use the word unconditional love, you mean thrusting your love on somebody who can't handle it and doesn't want it. That you do have conditions, and your conditions are that they love you back the way you want to be loved. And if somebody doesn't want to do that or isn't capable of doing that, it is not only delusional on your part, but it is abusive to keep trying to force it down their throat. Just because you've taken on the role of caretaker and a giver and healer doesn't mean that the person on the other end is capable of handling it or ultimately wants it. Her behavior, after the second time, you have no excuse. First time they do something, they reject you, okay, maybe they had a bad day. Second time, there's no excuse. You have clear evidence, this isn't going to work, they don't want it. So I'm not buying this that, yes, your conditions were that you laid down the law and come on. You didn't have any boundaries. If you had any boundaries, you would have left the moment that the first time she was abusive to you. That's how you have boundaries. A year later, 2 years later, 6 months later, 2 months later, you're going to lay down the law and put down the boundaries. Doesn't mean that you are now operating from a place of healthy conditions. Doesn't mean that at all. I laid down a boundary too, and I'm grateful that I did, because that's what ultimately ended the relationship, because she was incapable. And the boundary was, I said, I can't be in your life on any level unless you go and get regular therapy from a psychologist who deals with borderline personality disorder. To her credit, she really wanted to. She tried. And then, of course, the intimacy got too much and she flipped out. And then, not only was she not going to go, which she had wanted to do and talked about how fun that would be, not only was she not going to do that, but I was trying to gaslight her, and I was trying to destroy her life and her self-esteem just by even suggesting it. So yeah, if you do lay down a real healthy boundary, you'll see the mental disease. And the way I look at it is, it was her disease that did that. She really wanted it. She did. She really wanted to be with me. She really wanted it to work. She really wanted to be, the right person for me. But, she that's like asking that little baby to talk particle physics. She just can't do it. She may want to do it. I want to talk about particle physics with Daddy, but I don't understand it. Okay? So let's see if there's some other stuff I want to talk about. So my friend Brandon, here's my 3-step approach. I recommend it for you. My 3-step approach that by the way, I didn't make this up. This is pretty much the standard for anybody who's gotten recovery in the same way that I have. First thing, you got to seek out therapy from a qualified therapist who understands these kinds of things and can help you with your self-esteem and your boundaries, and help you to become conscious of the things that you're not conscious of. Second, number 2, 12-step work. I recommend Codependents Anonymous, Al-Anon will work, Adult Children of Alcoholics, all of those will work because, it basically teaches you how to be honest about what you're looking for, your expectations, and how to become honest about other people's inability to give you what you're asking of them. And then third is to have some kind of spiritual practice. I don't care what it is. Now, I've got a whole other channel that, you've seen the links for, that I do whatever crazy loony stuff over there. That's not everybody's cup of tea for sure. So I don't care what you do. I don't care if you're a Catholic or a born again Christian. I personally wouldn't do that, but if it doesn't matter. In terms of healing from this, you just have to have some kind of spiritual thing. You're not religious, not a problem. Neither am I. Feel free to be an agnostic or a Buddhist. Feel free to be spiritual but not religious. You can worship a doorknob. Anything. Religious people in 12-step groups get upset when you say my higher power is a doorknob. But that's okay. Doorknob doesn't work for them. But if you're sitting in a room and the doors are closed, a doorknob has more power than you because you just turn it and the doorknob has the ability to open the door into another reality. That could work. Anything that allows you to expand beyond where you are. And that's all that they mean by that. And working specifically the 12 steps for me, the fourth step, which is looking at your resentments and your expectations on other people. That's what did it. So that three-pronged approach and really putting the time and effort into that and really admitting that you have a problem, it's called codependence, then you can heal. And if you're years later, you're not me, I wasn't in the same relationship you were, I didn't go through whatever damage. I've been doing this for almost 40 years, so I knew exactly what to do. It was very difficult, but I knew exactly what to do. And even though it felt like I was never going to recover, and it did, it felt like that I had been damaged forever. And I remember saying afterwards, I think I'm broken. I don't think I can ever love or be loved ever again. But doing that work, and again, I had a lot of experience, so it was easy. If you don't have as much experience, it might take you a little longer. But I'm now at the point where I look back and I have no reaction to it. I'm not full of pain. I'm not full of regret. I'm not full of sadness. I don't feel any guilt. I don't feel abandoned, unloved, none of those things. Truth is that, if I hadn't seen this channel taking off, and if I hadn't seen people asking for more of these videos and seeing that it was really helping people, I would have just forgotten about it. In fact, when I think about, I've been here in Australia for, a year. It's going to be a year in 3 days. When I think about it, I think about all the places that, and then I remember, oh yeah, and then I spent those 2 months down there in Byron Bay. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I was with her for longer than that, but I moved down there and it was a whole drama fiasco. But I forgot about it, and I've forgotten about it because it's now resolved. Okay? So if you want to be in a place where you can have it resolved and you can look back on it like, oh yeah, there was that 1 year I had that really bad flu, but you don't spend wakeless nights waking up crying and thinking about it, then maybe that approach will be helpful for you. So, by the way, as I've said that's what this link is about here. If you're watching this right after I uploaded it, you can go to that site. There's nothing there now. It just says, there will be something there soon. But this is in response to repeated requests for me to take on clients. Some people have tried chasing me down, you got to talk to me, I need your help, which please don't ever do that. That's, respect my privacy. Please don't, find my Skype or find my email somewhere and then say, I have to talk to you. Please don't do that. I've thought about the requests of, because I am a counselor, but it's on a spiritual, in a spiritual vein, and I don't feel that I want to undertake that kind of counseling commitment. So I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I think that people who have been in this kind of thing need to be with a qualified mental health professional. But you can have the same benefit that I give on this channel by going to 12-step groups. In any case, I have started to put together a video series, which if somebody wants, I'll go like in more organized detail, the 3-step approach that I took and the things that I needed to understand and learn in order to get to the place where I'm at now. So I'll make that available to people if they want that. If not, not a problem at all. But that'll be here at this link. So that's why I'll have that link up here from now on instead of my other links when I do this. So that's it for me. Bottom line is, if you want to recover, you've got to acknowledge that you are codependent. You've got to. In my experience, if you don't get to that point and realize that you are also abusive in your own way, that you are also have if you want to call it a mental illness, fine. If you don't understand that you yourself are coming from your own selfish needs based on your dysfunction and you're trying to force it down the throat of somebody who's incapable, if you're not able to change the narrative of you being the victim and you being the white knight who's coming with the purity of the truth and I've martyred myself for you, if you're not willing or able to get honest and drop that that nonsense, then you're going to continue to be in pain and you're going to continue to be angry and resentful, and you're gonna attract it in your life again. There are people on this channel that admittedly keep attracting borderlines. It means that you're not healed. It means that your wound is not being addressed, and just getting out of that borderline relationship isn't going to protect you, because you've got this feeding cage that's just free food. You've got a sign, free food, come devour me. And another borderline will find you and you'll find them. Okay? All right. So that's it for me. I will talk to you guys later.